Welcome.
The legend that is.
Which name we going with?
Well, we call him Johnny Albion.
Yeah.
But what do you want to be referred as to, John?
Well, you can call me Johnny Albion if you want, or Johnny Alma, whatever.
Johnny Alma.
I'm quite happy to be
Johnny
called
Albion.
anything, really. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. What you ain't got to do is insult me intelligence, because if you do that, well, hang on a minute, that's going to be easy. Carry on.
As if we would.
The forever joker. So, John has kindly said he'd come on as a guest to talk about the male's perspective of the menopause.
Mhm.
Now, whether that's living with somebody, working with women, or just how men see menopause in general, this could be quite an interesting half hour, I think.
Should we go with the male menopause first?
Firstly, do we want him to introduce himself a little bit, where he works, what you do, why we call you Johnny Albion?
Go on.
My name's John Homer, for those people who don't know me. I come from Quarrybonk, the centre of the universe, born there in 1955, and just in March qualifying for my pension. So I don't know whether to celebrate that or to be, thinking, oh, well, I'm at that age now. But I'm a long-time Albion fan. I've been a season ticket holder there since 1976. I also work at the club on match days. I write in the programme. I help out with any queries the club have got about history or anything like that. I also work at the Black Country Museum, and I've done for 15 years. If you ask me to pick two best places in the world to work, in respect of me, as it were, then you couldn't go any further than the Black Country Museum and the Albion, could you? You two girls know me, and you know that spot on. I do a lot of work for the Albion Foundation and for the museum outreach for Alzheimer's, dementia patients, memories sessions, Black Country memories gigs. So I write poetry and all sorts of stuff going on.
We've heard your poetry in the past.
Have you?
When you've worked with us in the streets.
Yeah.
There was a particular song that you used to sing to our Millie, one of the characters.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it? You can do.
Yeah, I'll
We'd
do
love
that
to
now.
hear it.
Yeah, it's a very old. There's two actually I know. The one I don't sing very often. The one is a very old Victorian ballad, which I sing occasionally, which is called "If You Really Loved Me, You'd Bugger Off." And the other one. And the other one that I used to sing to Millie in the street was, of course, if you were the only girl in the world and I were the only boy, I'd suddenly shoot myself.
Which brings us on to, do you think that's what men think a lot of when women are going through the menopause, John?
Well, I mean, look, it comes to the point at what age do blokes hear about the menopause? What is the menopause? When you're in your teens and people talk about the menopause, frankly, you ain't got a clue what they're on about, how do you describe the menopause? Older women, you're going through the change. You used to hear your granny talk about the change, and you thought, what on earth's that? Is it going to wake up one morning a bloke or something? Is it that bad? And it's obviously a very important part of a woman's life, because it's a fundamental change in their physiology and chemistry and biology, isn't it? Yeah. There's a very astute view of it. So when you're growing up and you hear about the change, I suppose the first time you experience it when your mother is going through the change, and something happens and you're on the end of your mother's wrath for no apparent reason. And you go to your dad and say, what the hell was all that about, Dad? And he'd give you the phrase, wouldn't he? Don't worry, you'll have to put up with it as going through the change. So, if you look in the dictionary for the change, right, it's a sum of money left over from something you bought, So you won't find a medical phrase or a medical definition of it. The change, will you? I don't know. You've never found one, have you? Have you ever found a medical definition for the change?
For the change,
no. And of course, in the Black Country, you have to add that little bit on the end, don't you? As are they going through the change, or is the change it? Because that
Exactly.
country blokes finish a sentence with a question, don't they?
Yeah.
I went to my mother to give me a good hiding there. So I went to my father because I don't like it. And I said, Dad, what's happening there, day? And he said, "It's going through the change." Hey,
Hiya.
who's her? Who's her? The cat? You know. So let's just say that you find at some point where life was quite normal and everything flowed along with your mum and your sister. Yeah, sister as well. I had an older sister. All of a sudden, for a while, you're treading on them proverbial eggshells, eh? And your dad had come to you with the other piece of advice. Look, mate, or look, John, at this moment in time, I can tell you unreservedly that you can't do nothing right for doing wrong. Yeah. So let's try combating the change. Here, Mum, here's a lovely bunch of daffodils. When you bought them for, you know, I like tulips. You know, so it's
It's right. What you're saying is
Mm.
absolutely spot on. Yeah.
you
Well,
know, and
working down at the museum with all the women that are down there of all different ages, have you experienced it down there, or do they tend to contain it?
that's a very difficult question without revealing names and pack numbers. You know what I mean? It's the old thing, you know. With a bloke, you're going to work and you're in a bad mood, and they say he's got out the wrong side of the bed. You know, with women, and you've asked me the question, you go there and they're in a bad mood, and it don't appear to have any cause or reason. You know, it because them in the I don't know, it because them in the chapel and they want to be in the poorhouse, or they don't want to be in the poorhouse, they want to be in Gregory's, or they don't want to be in Gregory's, they want to be in the hardware store. You know, there don't appear to be any rhyme or reason to it. It's just the mood they're in, and you didn't. It's no good going up if you was in a bad mood. It's no good me walking up to you and saying, "What's the matter with you? You going through the change, bin you?"
No.
You know, how would you feel about that if I asked you that?
I'd want to slap you. Yeah.
Big
that'd,
time.
That'd be it. Yeah. You
Big time.
just can't, can you?
And
So-
that's the other thing. That's the other thing. You know, years ago, you know, our grandparents and our parents to a certain extent, there were certain topics that were taboo, you know, and you couldn't openly engage them in certain topics, could you? If you had a problem, you know, what you had to do is share it with your mates, who very often gave you fake news, you know, like, "Oh, it's going to drop off." If you haven't got that, mate, you're in trouble. It's going to drop off and you'll never see it again. Or you know, you hear your parents or your grandparents talk.
Yeah.
I try and lip read or interpret that, haven't you? You know.
Yeah.
So it's what we need is what we're doing now. We need
Yeah.
actually fundamental conversation. Like lots
Yeah.
of other things in the past that were taboo, people are prepared to talk about it, like the
Yeah.
villain. That's taboo. People are prepared to talk about him now. And what you need is the opportunity for an open conversation.
Mhm.
But in order to have that, everybody's got to be educated, haven't
Yeah.
they? You know,
Definitely.
because I suspect, like a long time ago, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not being misogynistic. What's that mean? I suspect there still may be women and girls around today who have never been told, or it hasn't been fully explained, what is happening to their body as they go through this change, this momentous biological happening.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, me too.
I agree. That's
Yeah.
why we wanted to start this, because I haven't spoke to my mum about much. I know you
have, yeah,
you
yeah.
do, don't you? But I do think, again, you'd kind of learn from the women around you. So you're experiencing certain things and you're going, is this just me? Am I getting old? Or is it the menopause? We were chatting to another woman when we recorded another podcast. And prior to doing this, I hadn't even heard of perimenopause.
No.
I didn't even know there was a peri before full blown.
Yeah.
I thought
do tell. Was that the lead up to it? Where you get the little signs?
Yeah.
I think that there's
It's-
so many of signs though,
Yeah.
John, you know, it wasn't just the standard ones that you think, you know, it's so much more. It's like, you know, you can suffer from vertigo. That's happened to me. You know, your joints ache, your feet hurt, you know, you name it. It's not just like what's going on up here. You forget everything. You know, you can't work out whether you want to be on the planet or not anymore. You know, it proper plays havoc, because in some ways we're not allowed to celebrate women getting older. So there's a society tries to get you to hold on to, and it's slipping away instead of embracing the new version of yourself. But women are struggling in this society to try and hold on to the old self, and you can't. It's moving.
With the perimenopause as well, it can last. The longest I've read is up to 10 years. Before the menopause even hits. And apparently, from what we've researched, is the perimenopause can be worse than the menopause. So, because menopause is classed when menstruation stops. So when the periods stop altogether, and they've stopped for a certain amount of time, 18 months or something like that. And then you are menopausal, whereas me and Deb are like perimenopausal.
Of course, the other thing from the male perspective is, what can you do and how can you help to be supportive during this time? If it's 10 years, that's a hell of a slog for anybody, both the man and the woman, isn't it? Yeah. You know, and I dread to think.
Mine just went to another country.
When they say they've got a hot flush, I'm thinking, oh yes, this is great. No, it's nothing to do with you, John. It's the menopause. You know, males. I suppose males have a similar malady, if that's the right word, with the coming to terms of aging, not being able to do what you used to do in the past. Yeah.
Yeah.
So our problem is, as we never grow up, is not being able to play football anymore, perhaps, or not being able to play cricket. Or when you're a kid, you do things and you never think about it. You're on a swing, you're climbing up a tree, you're on a rope ladder, you're jumping over a brook, you're on a wall. You couldn't give a monkeys, could you, of what's going on? And all of a sudden you get to a certain age when you think you're on the wall and you think, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. This is dangerous. You've no concept of dangerous when you're a boy.
No.
Or a youth, you know, do things that you'd never dream of doing now. So with the male menopause, if that's the right word, I think it's a coming to terms with the aging process. There isn't a biological change other than the aging process, but certainly in your head, it takes a bit of coming to terms. The body, the spirit is willing, but the body won't go there. So going back to the point that I was making, it's difficult to come to terms with the mood swings that you have during the change. And it's difficult to cope with that. I'm probably certain, and you'll probably have an idea or stat somewhere, that marriages have ended because of this.
Yeah. I would say so, yeah.
And that's how serious it is.
Yeah.
Because it becomes unbearable for one party or the other. The woman going through the change may see the male, if we're talking about that relationship, that they can do nothing right.
Yeah. What do you think men would want to know about what women are going through?
Talk. Sit down and tell me how you feel. And if possible, sit down and tell me what I can do to help you feel better. Or alternatively, if I can't do that because it's so bad, then at least tell me what you need to do to be able to tolerate me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very understanding of you. I like, that's a great answer, that is, John.
Because if you don't understand, then you can't cope with it. But it is a two-way thing. Whatever either of the partners is going through, there must be an element of talking so that you know what they're going through. You've just said about this peri-menopause. I've never heard of that. I've never heard. Certainly, there were times when my mother, when she was getting older, you could see arguments with my dad, and you'd think, what the hell is all that about? And it was certainly, I think, my mother going through the change, and dad not understanding it. It's a taboo subject, yeah? So you get all this street stuff, don't you? People tell you about it, and it's going nowhere. It's got to be tolerance on both parties to understand each point of view.
Yeah. And I think as well, because what me and Deb are kind of in the process of doing as well is creating a course so women can kind of recognize when those mood swings come in and the hormones are raging, so that they instantly recognize it, so that it doesn't get too far, so that you don't have an unnecessary argument that could have been stopped. So I think from the female perspective, that's what kind of we're aiming to do, isn't it? And I think that's brilliant. From the male perspective, if a man was to sit down and say exactly what you've just said, talk to me, tell me how I can help. And I think it's a two-way street, isn't it?
Communication is key in anything, isn't
Absolutely.
it? And if the lines aren't open, then how can anyone help? Us women can't blame the other, your partner, if they don't understand, because in your head you've created this massive drama. You haven't spoken to them about it, so they don't know, but you're expecting them to know without you opening. And let's face it, you men are simple creatures, and I mean that in the nicest possible term. You need it just to be said, where we in our heads is you should know.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. You should know.
Yeah, you should know.
What's happening to you? You should know. It's not like going to the supermarket and bringing the wrong stuff, is it? Well, you should know. Okay, I'll hold my hand up there.
Yeah.
But certainly, you can't expect a bloke or your partner, whoever they may be, to fundamentally understand what's happening to you physiologically, unless you explain it to him. I mean, if I'll bounce a question back to you, would it be sufficient to say, look, John, I'm in a bad mood today because, so steer clear?
Yeah.
Is that an attitude to take?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think it's wise. Just leave me alone. I've got one on me. I don't know where it's going to come, where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Yep. Mine would what he did many times. Stayed downstairs. I went upstairs, and it was fine. It was
logic, sensible. Yeah. It's only the same as if you got a bad headache. You don't want a lot of noise around you.
Yeah.
Shut up, John. I can't stand you talking to me anymore. I'm going upstairs because I've got a headache.
It's true. Yeah, it's the same.
Or you're making a row. You're making a row. What I think about as well. If you think about, excuse me, older women who have children late in life, those children growing up probably have more of an experience of those mood swings than if you've had a child early on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because like we say, if we don't understand what's going on with us, how can we expect your partner to? They're not going to, are they? No. They've got no idea. And I can imagine, there's been a lot of splits because of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think men in general want to know, or do you think there's just a small percentage of men that are interested in knowing what's going on with or do you think there's still an age old theory that that's happening to you, like you've got to deal with your own stuff?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, in terms of the fact that it's very much down to the individual character of the male as to how they deal with it. You will get some who say, I don't want to know. Clear off. All I know is you're making my life a misery and I don't want to know. Yeah. As I say, the sensible option is to say, look, tell me how it's affecting you. Tell me what I can do to help. There may be, and there's also still people around, I should imagine, and no disrespect to anybody, because it's down to how you are as an individual, how you've been brought up, what your parents and your grandparents have told you. There are some who would be aghast at having to even talk about it.
Yeah.
But they couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
From the point of view that they don't like what's happening, or from the point of view that because it's never been explained to them, they just don't understand what's going on. It's like having a car that's broke down. You can do two things. You can either ignore it completely and keep going till it blows up, or you can do something about it. You know, if you keep going till it blows up and your excuse is I don't understand what cars are about, then that's no good.
Yeah,
that's true. Very, very true. Very,
that
very
little
true.
anomaly, you know.
Yeah.
And what you've got to do is you deal with it early, because the longer it goes on, the worse it gets.
Yeah. I was just going to say, my mom, because obviously I remember my mom going through the menopause, and to be fair, she didn't have a horrific time, because some women go through the most horrific time, but there was various certain symptoms that she had. And obviously, since doing this, I've spoken to her, and I said, do you remember my nan, like your mom, going through it? And she was like, no, it was never talked about. And my mom, even when, and obviously my mom had got an older sister, and when my mom's period started, like we're talking back in the 50s, early 60s, you know, she didn't know. And she went to my auntie. My auntie didn't say anything. And my nan said, talk to your dad. And it was my granddad that was the one that sorted all that, you know, she had to go to the male figure to find out what was going on with her body, because it just wasn't talked about back then.
This is this ridiculous attitude that they took way back in the past, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where they wouldn't talk about things, and it was in hushed tones, you know, and that breeds ignorance and myth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because, as you say, you get the word off the street then, which is totally different to what it should be. You only want one idiot who tells you something and it frightens you to death, you know. Like if you're not careful, you'll bleed to death.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Girls say that, you know, and you get these stupid things like, have you fell off your bike yet? You know, that was an old one, wasn't it? You remember that at school?
Yeah.
You go around and say, have you fell off your bike? And you'd be there as a boy thinking, what the hell are they on about?
Yeah.
And nobody would tell you.
No. And they didn't, and my nan didn't talk about going through the menopause as well, because I know, well, the only thing that my mom remembers was my granddad, because I know, without going too graphic, before the periods stop, they can be very heavy, very painful, and a bit all over the place. And again, the only thing my mom remembers was my granddad ripping up sheets for my nan, because for that very reason. And again, but it wasn't explained as to why. And again, people didn't ask back then. So
you can go on about loads of things for you. Contraception, you know, as a boy, one day you're talking like that at school and it's lovely age, and the next day, whoa, what's happened to me voice?
Yeah.
Hey, what's happened to my voice, Dad? I'm growing these hairs all over the place. I'm turning into a werewolf. They talk about it, did they?
No, not at all.
You know, and tell me another question. You know, way back, contraception, blah, blah, blah. My granny, my mother was one of 10, you know.
Wow.
And I suppose way back, the change was a way of liberating women who was fed up of being baby machines, basically, I suppose.
Yeah.
You think that was
it? Oh, definitely.
Didn't we, Deb, do some research about women in other countries and other cultures? And I'm sure that came up. It was almost like in this particular country, the women literally were exactly, you've just said, baby machines, and they were actually liberated when the menopause happened, because they were no longer that baby making machine. So, and it's a bit sad, isn't it? But obviously,
it's very sad, really, because, you know, once again, why should it come to that? Childbirth is a very beautiful thing, but I suppose there's one instance where they talk at the museum about a house up the road at Dudley where somebody had 22 kids. From a female point of view, can you imagine that? 22 children.
Is that genuine? 22
that's
kids?
That's genuine. They tell you about it at the museum.
Oh my God.
You talk about you see documentaries about Dublin and the Irish in one thing and another, and no contraception, and huge families living in the same households, you know. So I was supposed to get up one morning as a woman and think, God, thank God for that.
I know.
Yeah,
I don't have any more kids now.
22 years, I must have been shelling them out every time. I must have got caught the second that she'd given birth. And
well, that's right. There was a family that lived in the poorhouse that the Newtons, right? And we know for a fact from the records that Mrs. Newton had 11 children in 11 years.
I mean, the pressure on your body alone.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it's insane, isn't it?
And again, talking like with giving birth and the whole postnatal depression, you know, and everything. Imagining if someone had, I mean, we know people that have had postnatal depression, and I think again back then, did they even recognize what it was?
Probably
you know,
not.
And being so unbelievably depressed and not knowing why, and having this newborn that is demanding your attention constantly. And if who knows whether this lady went through that as well. As you just don't know, do you?
We go back to these archaic times as well, where Mr. demanded his conjugal rights. What sort of situation was that?
I know,
So
it's interesting because I've recently been watching, I don't know whether you've seen it, The Handmaid's Tale.
I've heard about that. That's a book as well, isn't it, Will?
Yeah, it was written in the 80s, and but the story is fascinating. My friend had started to watch it, and she said it's got to be one of the only series that I've watched where I've literally been shouting at the screen.
Yeah, anger.
Anger, because of the way that these women are oppressed. And if you think we're looking at like it's America like now, so it's not like this was two centuries ago. We're talking like modern day, and these women, because the plot basically is there's a lot of women that are infertile. So what they've done is they've taken the women that are fertile, and they don't become maids as such in the house, but they are there to basically be impregnated by the commander of the house.
They're basically breeding
machines. But the oppression behind it all is it's horrific. And then you think, well, this is just a fictional piece of literature that's been created into this. But in certain parts of the world, this is actually the truth. This is actually what's happening.
Yeah.
And when you look at it like that, you go, and that's happening now. This isn't like, you can't even imagine what some women actually have to go through. And then with all the different parts of what goes on with their lives anyway, you've got, like you say, young girls. I was talking to a lady the other day, and they're creating a pack for young girls out in oh God, I forgot the bloody country now. What's it called? Well, that's a bit stupid of me. It's on the tip of me. The Gambia.
Yeah.
So, and what they're doing is they're wanting to take out period packs, because these young girls are just literally dirty conditions. They're just ripping up rags. Some of them don't even know why they're bleeding. Like you said, there's no education. So that what they're trying to do is help these young girls to at least start out in their womanhood part of life and have an understanding what's going on with their bodies. And
know what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, working at the museum, right? I mean, look, I come from round here anyway. I come from Quarrybunk, and we've all had our grandparents and our great-grandparents and mums and dads, and you know exactly what they were like when you were growing up and I was growing up. Working at the museum gives you the time for reflection and looking at history. And to be able to convey that to the visitors. I don't know whether you've been there or not, or the scene outside the poorhouse where I come home and the grate's dirty and I have a go. And when my missus comes home, I'll go out in the street for dramatic effect. And I'll say, when my missus comes home, I'm going to give her this because the grate's dirty and her A cleaned it and there's a filthy cow and all this business. People look at you in amazement. And they said, well, did that happen? I said, of course it happened.
Yeah.
You know that. You know that. I've seen it in the street when I was a kid. Husbands having a go at the wives, everybody would gather around. There's a row, them having a go, and everybody would come out and they'd be in the flaming street throwing abuse at one another. And it's unbelievable what happened.
Yeah.
Working at the museum and knowing your history, it brings it home what was going on.
Yeah.
And it was something that was propagated by the male and propaganda all the way through. When you consider it took so long for women to get the vote, that's basically saying you ain't got the intelligence to make up your mind who you should vote for. Eh? That's why we don't want you to have the vote. Because well, heaven knows what will happen if you have the vote. Heaven knows what will happen if we had a woman prime minister in. You know, what if the woman prime minister was in there and who was going through the change? You know, can you imagine that?
Yeah.
We reckon a certain lady prime minister was at the certain age and probably was going through the change.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, you see.
We've already said it, haven't we?
Took the hint. Took the hint. You know. It's all right saying the Third World War broke out. Oh, well, it's totally down to the fact that it was going through the change. The Russians rung that morning, who was in a bad mood. Normally it'd be okay, but it told him to bugger off at that started.
Oh dear, it's so true though. It's so true. So
and you know what as well, you talking about the whole you doing a scene, like reenacting a scene that would have happened as part of history. And again, the really, really sad truth is it's still happening today. The difference is it's happening behind closed doors, whereas back then it was done in front of everybody as well and kind of brushed under the carpet and ignored, whereas it is still happening today and it's horrific.
In the old days, it's her own fault.
Yeah.
Has bought it on herself.
Yeah.
What, because they put enough sugar in his tea? Is that what it is? You know, even something as soft as that. You know, if they come home and the tie already, whoa! What they've been doing all afternoon then? Where's my bloody tie?
I know.
But again, that's just been passed down generation to generation to women, to, you know, men have been brought up to well, not so much now possibly, but to expect that, you know, that's what the woman's role is, that's what the man's role is, and that's how you work it together. So where's the love and the, you know, you were talking earlier about like if a man needs to know what's going on with his other half, then he needs to they need to have a conversation to communicate. Well, in some marriages, it just doesn't even happen normally. So they're never going to understand what's going on for a woman, are they?
No. And the problem, of course, is this, as I say, this attitude was propagated, if you think about, and it was the same for blokes as well, to a certain extent, back in the Victorian, Edwardian era. The class system was there, wasn't it? And this was your lot in life. Your lot in life as a girl was to go up and work in the big house and serve the Lord and Lady. And if you got married, your lot in life was to subject yourself to your husband's whims, and he ruled the roost and he told you what to do, and you had to obey him. And sadly, I suppose, if they were indoctrinated enough, girls, women would put up with that because that's what they were told that their lot in life would be. And that was criminal in itself. Yeah. Because that's what their mother's lot in life was, and their granny's life, and their great. You don't want to upset your husband.
And they didn't know any better, did they? They didn't know any better, so you would accept it. Where now it's like not a chance in hell. Well, for most of us, not a chance in hell. You know, we've moved. Yeah, absolutely. We're all equal at the end of the day. Yeah, we're all equal. You know, so
my ethos has been all along through my life. I've dealt with the general public. You don't look at the gender. You don't look at the sex. You don't look at the colour of the skin. You look at the person. Yeah. And everybody is the same. We're all human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Problem comes when other people come along and start defining you and pigeonholing you as this, that, or the other. That's what you've got to resist. You've got to resist that. I'm not this, I'm not that, I am me.
Yeah.
Ellen Reddy, I am woman. You've heard that, eh?
Yeah.
There we are.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Hey, I'm a mom.
That's it.
You know what? What a great I am woman. What a great note to finish.
Absolutely.
On as well.
Absolutely.
Do you know what, John? I know neither of us knew what we were going to expect with you today. So, it has been enjoyable, fascinating, and I love that we've brought history into this as well, as you talking about, you know, how men should be when women are going through the menopause, the male menopause and everything. So Thank you so much.
It's been absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely. We'll have to have you on again. We'll have you on again.
Yeah.
Oh, folks, I'm always having me on. I hope nobody out there has been offended, and there's the disclaimer is if they have, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
Exactly.
You know.
I don't think so at all. I think at the end of the day, it's important to hear a male's perspective on things, because us women will chat to each other, but like you say, how many of us actually go back and speak to your partner and tell him or her, if that's the case may be, what's going on,
whoever your partner
is.
It's the same, it's the same, but have you ever met anybody going through the male menopause?
No.
I think my partner, definitely, because he was talking about testosterone levels dropping and feeling a different way, and he would be very closed off at times, and then all of a sudden have all this energy to do things. So I think it does hit men, all joking aside. I do. It's just that,
as I say, if you sat down and talked to us, it's very much, I think, my personal opinion is the aging thing, and not being able to do what you used to do. And not being able to have that physical release of going and running. I mean, some people of an age, they still do it anyway because they keep themselves fit. Us blokes, we're not always fitness fanatics, are we?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the clock because I've got to get my marbles.
Right. No, that's fine. We're ready to finish anyway. So thank you again, and we'll have you on again at some point.
Get me on again, and we'll have a bit of saftness next time.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll link you up with Luke next time. We'll have a foursome.
Oh my God, that's going to be interesting, isn't it? So
I don't know what to say to that, really. I'll drink my tea. How can I thank you for asking me on? I've really enjoyed it. It's been totally different.